After 10 hours of driving in the snow with my arthritis to celebrate Christmas with my daughter, I came to the door and heard, "I hope he doesn't make it." They laughed, mocking my sacrifices. Instead of a warm welcome, it was a heartbreaking betrayal. I quietly closed the door and left. And then a real storm began. What happened next changed their lives forever. They will never forget it. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. My fingers, stiff from arthritis and cold, fumbled with the door knob. 10 hours of driving through Michigan's snow, white knuckling the steering wheel while my joints screamed with every mile. The gift bags in my back seat had shifted during the treacherous drive, wrapping paper crinkling like broken promises. Ashley's house glowed warm against the December darkness. Christmas lights draped the porch railings, twinkling red and gold, exactly like the ones I'd helped her hang 3 years ago when Howard's back was acting up again. The same excuse he used for everything. I raised my hand to knock, then stopped. Voices drifted through the thin door, Ashley's laugh mixing with Howard's deeper rumble. My heart lightened. They were home safe, probably wondering where their old man was. I'd driven through a blizzard to be here. Arthritis be damned. Nothing would keep me from Christmas with my daughter.
I honestly hope he doesn't make it. Ashley's voice cut through my thoughts like ice.
My hand froze on the doorknob. "Come on, that's your dad," Howard replied. But his tone held amusement, not reproach.
I know.
But look at this weather. Maybe the roads will be too bad. We could have one Christmas without him hovering, asking if we need money, bringing those awful sugar cookies.
Ashley's laugh again, lighter now. Just us.
No guilt trips about family togetherness. The old man does lay it on thick, Howard agreed. Always talking about his sacrifices, how he sold his business for you like we asked him to, right?
I never asked him to be my personal ATM. That was his choice.
The cold seeped through my coat, settling deep in my chest. I'd been standing there maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like hours. The Christmas music playing inside, silver bells, suddenly sounded mocking. Besides, Ashley continued, he's getting older. These long drives aren't safe for him anymore. We're actually being responsible by hoping he stays home. Very thoughtful of you, Howard said, and they both laughed. I stepped backward, my boots crunching in the snow. The sound seemed deafeningly loud, but the music and their conversation continued uninterrupted. My car sat 30 ft away, engine ticking as it cooled, exhaust still visible in the frigid air. 15 years since the divorce, and I'd built my entire life around Ashley. Sold Green Industries, my life's work, and invested everything in her happiness. Her house, Howard's art supplies, their car payments, grocery money when things got tight. I'd driven through blizzards, cancelled trips, ignored my own health, all because I thought family meant everything to her too. My phone buzzed. A text from Ashley. "Drive safe if you're coming, Dad. Weather looks rough." I stared at the screen, then at the warm windows where shadows moved behind drawn curtains. She'd sent this while laughing about hoping I wouldn't make it, while discussing my guilt trips and calling my homemade cookies awful. The gifts in my back seat suddenly felt like mockeries. Expensive scarves for Ashley, art books for Howard that cost more than most people's car payments. I'd agonized over every purchase, wanting to show them how much they meant to me. How much had I given them over the years?
200,000, 3?
I'd stopped counting after Ashley's wedding, when I'd paid for everything, because Howard's family couldn't contribute much.
I've been honored to do it.
Honored to walk my daughter down the aisle to provide for her new family. I reached for my car door handle, metal biting cold even through my gloves. The arthritis in my knees protested as I lowered myself into the driver's seat, but I barely noticed. Something had shifted inside my chest, something colder than the December air. Starting the engine, I backed out of their driveway slowly, carefully. No spinning tires, no dramatic exits, just a quiet departure from a house where I'd never really been welcome. In my rearview mirror, the Christmas lights grew smaller, then disappeared entirely as I turned onto the main road.
I wasn't heading home, not yet.
The highway stretched ahead, dark and empty, except for scattered snowflakes dancing in my headlights. For the first time in 15 years, I had nowhere I needed to be. No one counting on me. No one hoping I'd stay away. The radio played, "I'll be home for Christmas."
And I reached over to turn it off.
The silence felt better. It felt like the beginning of something new. The windshield wipers swept back and forth, clearing snow that fell faster than they could handle. I took the long way home, avoiding the main highway, needing time to process what I'd heard. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Arthritis forgotten in the face of something much more painful.
I hope he doesn't make it. Ashley's words echoed in my head with every turn of the wipers. Left, right, hope doesn't make it.
The rhythm became hypnotic, almost soothing, as my mind began to work differently than it had in years. By the time I reached my neighborhood, the raw shock had settled into something colder. My house sat dark and quiet at the end of Maple Street. Christmas lights I'd strung along the gutters 2 weeks ago, twinkling weakly through the snow. The driveway needed clearing, but I left the car running while I stared at the place I'd called home for 20 years. Inside, the silence felt different than it had this morning. This morning, it had been temporary, the quiet before joining family for Christmas.
Now it felt permanent, final. I hung my coat carefully in the closet.
The wet wool heavy in my hands. The gifts for Ashley and Howard sat in bags by the door, expensive scarves and art books that suddenly seemed like monuments to my own foolishness.
I stepped around them as if they might bite.
My study welcomed me with familiar smells of leather and old paper. 20 years of business success lined these walls, industry awards, photographs of groundbreakings, contracts that had made me wealthy enough to be generous. Too generous, apparently. The filing cabinet opened with a soft click. I pulled out folder after folder, spreading documents across my desk like a general planning a campaign. My will dated last spring. Ashley Graham Wilson, primary beneficiary. My life insurance policy, $2 million.
Ashley Green Wilson, sole beneficiary.
Bank statements told their own story. September, $3,000 transferred to Ashley. Emergency car repair. October, $5,000 roof leak. November, $2,500. Howard's art supplies every month for 3 years, sometimes more. Before that, the house down payment, $75,000. Before that, the wedding, $40,000. Before that, college. I got $20,000. I pulled out my calculator and started adding. The numbers grew larger than I'd expected. Conservative estimate, $280,000 over 15 years, more than some people earned in a lifetime, handed over to a daughter who hoped I wouldn't show up for Christmas. The computer hummed to life, its blue glow illuminating bank statements and investment portfolios. Everything pointed the same direction toward Ashley. Every safety net I'd built, every financial cushion, every inheritance plan, she was woven into my financial life like thread through fabric. Her memories surfaced sharp as winter air.
Ashley at 22 crying in my kitchen after graduation. Dad, I don't know how I'll ever pay back student loans.
My degree is useless. I'd handed her a check for the full amount the next day. Don't worry about it, sweetheart.
That's what fathers are for. Another memory.
Ashley at 28, Howard fidgeting beside her in my living room. Dad, we found this perfect house, but the down payment. I transferred the money before they finished asking.
And another Ashley last month, voice tight over the phone.
Howard's having trouble finding buyers for his paintings. We're a little short this month.
Another transfer.
Another hope that this time they'd get on their feet. They never intended to get on their feet.
Why would they when standing was so much effort?
I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled, watching snow fall past my window. For the first time in years, my mind felt sharp in a way it hadn't since selling Green Industries. Strategic calculating. This was a problem to be solved, not an emotion to be suffered.
Ashley wanted me gone from Christmas.
Maybe she wanted me gone permanently. The question was, how gone did she really want me to be? My lawyer's contact information glowed on the phone screen. Richard Morrison, estate planning specialist. We'd worked together for years, updating wills, managing trusts, ensuring Ashley's future security. Tomorrow was Christmas, but some conversations couldn't wait. I scrolled to his number and paused, thumb hovering over the call button. Once I made this call, there would be no going back to the man who'd driven through a blizzard with gifts in his back seat.
That man was gone anyway.
Christmas morning arrived with unusual quiet. No excited calls from Ashley, no hurried plans to coordinate gift exchanges. I sat with my coffee, documents from last night's review still scattered across my desk, and waited. The silence felt productive now, like the calm before a carefully planned storm. My phone rang at exactly 10:17 a.m. Ashley's name glowed on the screen, accompanied by her smiling photo from last year's Christmas dinner. The irony wasn't lost on me. I let it ring 3 times before answering, just long enough to sound tired. "Dad." Her voice carried the perfect note of concern, but I could hear the rehearsed quality underneath. "We were so worried when you didn't show up last night."
Are you okay?
I paused, letting her worry build.
I'm sorry, sweetheart. I should have called sooner, but I lowered my voice, adding just the right tremor. I had an accident. What are you hurt?
The alarm in her voice sounded genuine, though I noticed she didn't ask if I needed her to come over.
Ice on Miller Road. You know that curve by the old church?
My car slid right into the guardrail. I described it calmly, like someone still processing shock. Nothing serious, but they wanted to keep me at the hospital overnight for observation. Mild concussion, they said.
Oh my goodness! Ashley's exclamation felt theatrical. Dad, why didn't you call us?
We could have come to the hospital. I didn't want to ruin your Christmas Eve. Besides, I was pretty out of it. I heard Howard's voice in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. The doctor said I was lucky. Could have been much worse.
Is Howard there? I asked, though I already knew the answer.
Yes, he's right here. We're both so relieved you're okay. The speed of her response betrayed her eagerness to include Howard in the conversation, to share the burden of pretending to care. Howard's voice came through, probably on speakerphone now.
Ernest, man, that's terrible.
Is your car totaled? Interesting. His first question was about the car, not my well-being.
It's drivable, but there's some damage to the front end.
I'll have to get it looked at after the holidays. Well, the important thing is you're safe.
Ashley jumped back in. Are you sure you're okay?
Do you need anything? We could bring you some food or... No, I'm fine. Just tired. I let my voice trail off slightly.
I think I just need to rest today. Maybe we can reschedule Christmas dinner for next week.
The pause that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds too long. Of course, Dad, whatever you need. Your health is the most important thing. Howard and I were just saying how weird it felt without you here last night, she continued, but her tone had lightened considerably. Relief? Poorly disguised as continued concern. But now we understand why. You should definitely rest. I will. I'm sorry I worried you both. Don't apologize. These things happen.
Winter driving is so dangerous.
Howard's voice carried that false heartiness people use when they're uncomfortable. The main thing is you're okay. We'll check on you in a few days, Ashley added. Make sure you're feeling better.
And Dad, please be more careful driving. We can't lose you. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and smiled.
For the first time in 24 hours, they had passed their test perfectly. The relief in their voices when I'd suggested postponing Christmas dinner was unmistakable. Howard's immediate concern about the car rather than my injuries, Ashley's quick acceptance of my story without pushing for details or offering to visit. Most telling of all was their eagerness to end the conversation. Once they had established I was fine, no lingering questions about my condition, no insistence on coming over to check on me personally, just relief that their Christmas hadn't been disrupted, and I wasn't expecting them to actually care. I pulled out a notepad and wrote down their exact responses, the pauses, the tone changes, evidence of their true nature, though I hardly needed more proof. Still, it felt good to document their callousness in black ink. The beauty of my fabricated accident was its simplicity.
Miller Road really was treacherous in winter.
The old church was a familiar landmark, and everyone knew how dangerous ice could be. If they ever tried to verify my story, they'd find it perfectly plausible. More importantly, it established a pattern I could use later. I picked up my phone again and scrolled through my contacts until I found what I was looking for. Richard Morrison, my lawyer, had given me his personal number years ago for emergencies. This qualified. The week after New Year moved slowly, each day strengthening my resolve. I'd spent hours planning, researching, making lists of assets and legal requirements. Today, I would take the first real step toward showing Ashley exactly what her words on Christmas Eve were worth. Robert Mitchell's law office occupied the third floor of a restored Victorian building downtown. I'd been climbing these stairs for 15 years, usually for routine updates to ensure Ashley's security. The irony wasn't lost on me as I pushed open the familiar mahogany door. "Ernest, good to see you." Robert stood from behind his desk, genuinely pleased. We'd worked together since my divorce, and he'd helped to structure every financial safety net I'd built for Ashley. "How are you feeling?"
Ashley mentioned you had an accident over the holidays.
Of course she had, probably making sure everyone knew what a burden her injured father had become. "Much better, thank you, still a bit shaken, but it gave me time to think about some important matters. Please sit." He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. "What can I help you with today?" I pulled out a folder I'd prepared, placing it carefully on his desk.
"I need to modify my will."
"Specifically, I want to change the primary beneficiary." Robert's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's quite a significant change, Ernest. May I ask what's prompted this decision?" "The accident made me reconsider my priorities." I kept my voice steady, measured. "I've been thinking about loyalty, about who truly deserves support." I paused, letting him process. "I want to designate the Great Lakes Animal Welfare Foundation as my primary beneficiary instead of Ashley." The silence stretched for several seconds. Robert leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, studying my face.
"Ernest, this is a major decision. Have you discussed this with Ashley?"
"She's been your primary concern for years." "No, and I don't intend to." My voice carried the same tone I'd used in boardrooms when deals were non-negotiable.
"Animals don't lie to you, Robert."
"They don't hope you won't show up for important occasions. They appreciate care when it's given."
"I understand you're still processing the trauma from your accident, but this isn't about trauma."
I leaned forward slightly. "This is about clarity. I've spent 15 years supporting someone who sees me as a burden. I'd rather my resources go to creatures who understand gratitude." Robert studied the legal pad in front of him, making notes.
"Ernest, as your attorney, I have to ask, are you certain this reflects your true wishes?"
"Major changes after traumatic events aren't uncommon, but they're not always permanent."
"I've never been more certain of anything."
The conviction in my voice surprised even me. "I want this done today with all proper documentation and witnesses." For the next hour, we worked through the technical details. Robert explained the requirements, witness signatures, notarization, specific language for the charitable designation. The Great Lakes Animal Welfare Foundation would receive my entire estate, the house, investments, retirement accounts, everything I'd planned to leave Ashley. "The foundation does excellent work," Robert admitted as he prepared the documents. "Their shelter programs and wildlife preservation efforts are highly regarded." He looked up at me. "Though I still think you should consider discussing this with your family." My family made their position clear. I signed each page deliberately, watching Robert's assistant witness the signatures. "They'll understand my decision soon enough." As the final documents were notarized and sealed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete control over my own life. No more transfers to Ashley for emergencies. No more guilt about family obligations. No more pretending that blood relation guaranteed loyalty or love. "I'll file these with the court next week," Robert said, sliding the copies into a manila envelope.
"Ernest, if you change your mind, I won't." I stood, briefcase in hand.
"Thank you for handling this so efficiently." Walking back to my car, I felt lighter than I had in months. The sealed documents in my briefcase represented more than legal changes. They were proof that I'd finally stopped being a victim of my own generosity. Ashley would continue receiving her monthly allowance, completely unaware that her future had just evaporated. The thought brought me more satisfaction than it should have. But I'd moved past caring about should and shouldn't. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Time to address those automatic transfers that Ashley took so completely for granted. The will was just the beginning. Now came the practical lessons and consequences. I spent the week after my lawyer visit reviewing every financial connection between Ashley and myself, mapping out 15 years of dependency that she'd taken completely for granted. Thursday morning, I drove to First National Bank with a folder of account documents, the same bank where I'd opened Ashley's college fund 20 years ago, where I'd co-signed her first checking account. where I'd arranged the automatic monthly transfers that had become her financial lifeline. "Good morning, Mr. Green." Janet, my personal banker, smiled warmly.
How can I help you today?
"I need to close the joint checking account with my daughter and cancel all automatic transfers." I placed the paperwork on her desk. "Also, I'd like to change the beneficiaries on my insurance policies." Janet's eyebrows rose slightly. "Of course, sir. May I ask if there's been any family situation that's prompted this?" "Just updating my affairs after some recent health concerns." The lie came easily now. "I want to ensure my assets go where they'll be most appreciated." Friday afternoon, while Ashley was probably planning her weekend shopping trip, the changes took effect. The monthly $3,000 transfer that hit her account every 10th, the transfer she'd relied on for rent, groceries, Howard's art supplies, simply wouldn't.
Arrive this time.
Saturday morning brought the first test. I was having coffee when I imagined Ashley at the grocery store, cart full of organic produce and expensive cuts of meat, sliding her card at checkout with the same confidence she'd had for years. The call came at 2:17 p.m. "Dad," Ashley's voice carried confusion and embarrassment. "My car was declined at the store. There must be some mistake with the bank."
I let her talk to my voicemail.
"Hi, it's me again. I called the bank, but they said the account is closed."
That can't be right. Can you call me back? Howard's getting really frustrated and we need to buy groceries.
The third message arrived an hour later.
Howard's voice in the background.
"Tell him we can't pay rent next week if this isn't fixed." I turned my phone off and went to my study. From my window, I could see 3 houses down the street where Christmas lights still twinkled. Families inside probably gathered around dinner tables. Children complaining about homework.
Normal problems of normal people who didn't hope their parents wouldn't show up for holidays.
By evening, Ashley had left 7 messages. The progression was fascinating. Confusion, then concern, then barely controlled panic as the reality of their situation became clear. Howard's voice grew more prominent in the background with each call, his tone shifting from annoyance to accusation.
"Ashley, this is your fault somehow."
"You must have said something to set him off. I told you to be more careful around him." Sunday brought 11 more calls. I listened to each voicemail with the same methodical attention I'd once given to quarterly reports.
Ashley's voice grew thinner, more desperate.
Howard had apparently stormed out Saturday night, returning drunk and angry, blaming her for ruining everything.
"Dad, please, I don't understand what's happening."
"The bank won't tell me anything because of privacy rules. My insurance card isn't working either. Howard says you're punishing us for something, but I don't know what we did wrong." The irony was perfect.
She genuinely didn't know what she'd done wrong.
2 weeks of hoping I wouldn't show up for Christmas, laughing about my guilt trips and homemade cookies, dismissing my sacrifices as unwanted attention.
None of it registered as wrongdoing in her mind.
Monday morning's message carried a new note of desperation.
"Dad, I'm coming over. We need to talk about this face to face."
"I'll be there around noon." I looked at my phone, then at the calendar. Perfect timing.
I had been patient long enough, methodical enough.
Now, it was time for the conversation that would complete Ashley's education about consequences. But first, I had one more call to make. Financial pressure was just the beginning. Now came the consequences for years of cutting corners. I'd watched Howard sell his paintings at weekend markets for 3 years, always cash only, always stuffing bills into his jacket pocket with that smug smile that said he was smarter than the system. Tuesday morning, I drove to the public library downtown. Their computers offered complete anonymity. No login required, no tracking cookies, just clean access to official websites. The IRS whistleblower office page loaded with bureaucratic efficiency, offering forms for reporting tax fraud and undeclared income. The anonymous tip submission was remarkably simple. Howard Wilson, 1247 Maple Street. Unreported cash income from art sales at Detroit Farmers Market and Ferndale Art Fair. Estimated annual unreported income, $15,000, $20,000. I provided specific dates. I'd seen him working the markets, always returning home with thick envelopes of cash that never appeared on any tax return. Wednesday brought the second phase. From the same computer, I updated Ashley and Howard's creditors about their changed financial circumstances, no longer supported by a family member. Recent loss of co-signer support. Updated risk assessment recommended. The language was clinical, professional, devastating. Thursday's mail delivery must have been educational. I drove past their house that evening, slowly, carefully, like any neighbor, and saw Howard's car in the driveway, Ashley's silhouette, pacing past the living room window. The body language was unmistakable. Crisis mode activated. Friday morning brought the confirmation I'd been waiting for. Ashley's voicemail arrived at 7:23 a.m., her voice thin and strained.
Dad, something terrible is happening.
The IRS wants to audit Howard's taxes. They're asking about unreported income. How could they know about his art sales? And the credit card companies are demanding payment in full. Please call me back.
We need help.
Howard's voice rumbled in the background. Tell him this started right after he cut us off. That's not a coincidence. Their first spark of awareness. Excellent. The next voicemail, 3 hours later, carried a different tone. Dad, we drove to your house, but you didn't answer. Your car was there.
Are you avoiding us?
We need to talk about what's happening, Howard thinks. Howard thinks someone is targeting us specifically. Saturday's crisis escalated beautifully. Ashley left 4 messages throughout the day, each more desperate than the last. Howard had apparently spent Friday night calculating potential penalties and interest on unreported income. The numbers were sobering. $15,000 in unpaid taxes, plus penalties, plus interest, plus legal fees if prosecuted. Dad Howard says we could owe $40,000. We don't have that kind of money. We don't have any money. The mortgage company wants updated financial statements. Our credit cards are frozen. How did everything go wrong so fast? By Sunday, paranoia had blossomed into full suspicion. Howard's voice dominated the latest message.
Ernest, if you're listening to this, we know you're behind this somehow. Nobody else knew about my cash sales.
Nobody else had access to our financial information.
You're trying to destroy us. Ashley's voice interrupted. Howard, that's crazy.
Dad wouldn't, but even she sounded uncertain now. The evolution was perfect. From confusion to panic to suspicion to the beginning of understanding. They still couldn't prove anything. Still couldn't contact me directly, but they were starting to grasp the scope of their situation. Sunday evening brought my favorite message yet.
Ashley's voice was steady now, past panic, into something colder.
Dad, I don't know what we did to deserve this, but we get it now.
You're punishing us. Howard's right.
This isn't coincidence. We need to meet face to face and settle this. Whatever we did wrong, we'll fix it. But you can't just destroy our lives and not even tell us why.
I saved that message, played it twice more.
The shift from entitled victim to supplicant was exactly what I'd been working toward. Now they understood power dynamics, understood consequences, understood that their comfortable life had been entirely dependent on my goodwill. Monday morning would bring the next phase of their education. Financial ruin was just the foundation. Now came the lesson about how quickly a community can turn against you when the right information reaches the right people. I'd spent 15 years observing Ashley's social networks, her salon colleagues, the neighborhood book club, the weekend farmers market where Howard peddled his amateur paintings. Thursday morning found me back at the public library creating email accounts with carefully chosen names. Patricia concerned neighbor Maple Street resident. Business Watch. Each profile required a different computer session, a different backstory, a different voice. The librarian probably thought I was researching genealogy. The first wave targeted Ashley's workplace, a concerned client. Email to salon management. I'm worried about Ashley's personal situation affecting her work quality. She seems distracted lately, and there are rumors about financial troubles. Just thought you should know. Professional, caring, devastating. By Friday, the neighborhood phase began. Anonymous posts to the local Facebook group.
Has anyone else noticed all the official mail going to the Wilson house?
Hope they're not having the kind of problems that affect property values. The responses started within hours. Neighbors suddenly remembering unusual details, speculating about late-night arguments, noting how their car had been repossessed last month. Saturday brought the beauty salon consequences.
Ashley called my voicemail at 2 p.m. her voice tight with confusion.
Dad, something weird is happening at work. 3 clients canceled today, and Sarah asked if I was going through something. How does everyone know about our problems? We haven't told anyone anything. The neighborhood effects manifested Sunday. I drove past their house that evening and saw Ashley getting mail. Mrs. Henderson from next door, who chatted with Ashley for years, walked directly inside when she saw her approaching. The message was unmistakable. Pariah status activated. Monday's salon dynamics shifted dramatically. Ashley's manager pulled her aside.
I knew because she left another voicemail.
Dad, Linda wants to discuss my future with the salon. She says clients are expressing concerns about my personal situation affecting the business atmosphere. I don't understand how this happened so fast. Howard's anger reached new levels. His voice dominated Tuesday's message. This is coordinated earnest as someone spreading information about us systematically. Ashley lost 3 more clients today, and the farmers market coordinator asked if I needed to take a break from selling. Who else knows about our tax problems? Wednesday brought the isolation Ashley had never experienced in her adult life.
Dad, no one will talk to me.
The grocery store cashier was cold. The mailman won't make eye contact. And someone posted on the neighborhood app about financially unstable residents.
I haven't been to a community event in my life where I wasn't welcome.
This isn't natural.
Social dynamics.
This is deliberate destruction. Thursday's breaking point arrived with surgical precision. Ashley's salon manager terminated her employment officially for client retention concerns, but everyone understood the real reason. Her voicemail that evening was barely controlled.
Dad, I lost my job.
Linda said the salon's reputation was being affected by my personal circumstances. Howard's talking about leaving Detroit, maybe staying with his brother in Cleveland until this blows over. The beauty of social pressure was its apparent organic nature. Each person who avoided Ashley felt they were making an individual choice based on reasonable concerns. The accumulation felt like natural community response rather than orchestrated campaign. Even Ashley couldn't quite grasp how systematically she'd been isolated. Friday evening brought the message I'd been waiting for.
Ashley's voice was hollow, defeated.
Dad, I know you can hear these messages. Howard's packing his things.
He says I'm toxic now.
Being near me is destroying his reputation too. I have no income, no friends, no support system. Whatever lesson you're teaching, I'm learning it. Please call me back. But Howard's voice cut in angry and desperate.
Ernest, you win.
Okay, we get it. We're powerless without you. But this goes beyond punishment. This is systematic destruction of everything we've built. If you want to talk terms, we're ready to listen. Terms. Finally, they understood this was a negotiation, not a tantrum. Saturday morning would be perfect timing for our first direct conversation in a month. I watched their car pull into my driveway and felt only cold satisfaction. A month of careful planning had led to this moment. Through my living room window, I could see Ashley's face, pale, desperate, nothing like the confident woman who'd laughed about hoping I wouldn't show up for Christmas. They sat in the car for several minutes arguing. Howard gesticulating angrily, Ashley staring at my house with something approaching horror. Finally, they got out and approached my front door with the grim determination of people who had nothing left to lose. I answered before they could knock. Dad, Ashley's voice cracked on the single word. Behind her, Howard looked older, defeated, like a man who discovered his easy life had hidden costs. Ashley, Howard. I stepped aside to let them in, noting how they moved.
Ashley hesitant.
Howard aggressive but uncertain. I wasn't expecting you. Weren't you? Howard's voice carried barely controlled fury. Everything started falling apart right after Christmas. Right after you supposedly had your accident. His eyes narrowed. Funny thing is, your car's been in the driveway every time we've driven by. I met his stare calmly.
I've been recovering.
Doctor's orders to rest. What doctor?
Ashley's voice was thin, desperate.
What hospital? We called everywhere Christmas Day, trying to find you. Nobody had any record of Ernest Green being admitted. The moment stretched between us. I could have maintained the fiction, created more elaborate lies. Instead, I let the silence speak for itself.
You were never in an accident, Ashley whispered.
You've been here the whole time, haven't you?
I didn't answer.
I didn't need to. Howard stepped forward, his artist hands clenched into fists. You son of a, he caught himself, but barely. You've been watching us fall apart, enjoying it.
I've been observing, I said carefully. That's different. Observing what? Ashley's voice rose.
Our bank accounts being closed, my job being destroyed, Howard's tax problems, the whole neighborhood turning against us. You think that's all coincidence? Interesting theory. I settled into my favorite chair, forcing them to remain standing. The power dynamic was exactly where I wanted it. What makes you think any of that has anything to do with me?
Ashley's eyes searched my face, looking for something.
Guilt, anger, satisfaction? What she found there made her take a step backward. The timing, she said slowly. Everything started right after Christmas.
Right after.
Her voice trailed off as understanding began to dawn. Howard looked between us, sensing currents he couldn't quite grasp.
Right after what? Ashley couldn't take her eyes off me. I saw the exact moment when the terrible possibility formed in her mind. The memory of Christmas Eve, the conversation she'd had with Howard about hoping I wouldn't show up.
The cruel laughter about my guilt trips and homemade cookies.
You were there, she whispered, before you called us.
You were already there. I remained perfectly still, letting her work it out for herself.
What the hell are you talking about? Howard demanded.
But Ashley wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring at me with growing horror, understanding spreading across her face like a stain. You heard us talking.
That's why you left.
That's why everything started falling apart. The recognition in her eyes was everything I'd worked toward for a month. Not just understanding that her life had been systematically destroyed, but knowing why. Knowing that her own words, her own cruelty, had set everything in motion. You heard what we said about you, she continued, her voice barely audible. About hoping you wouldn't make it through the snow.
About your guilt trips and she couldn't finish.
Howard finally understood enough to be afraid. Ashley, what did you say? But I was still looking at my daughter, seeing her finally comprehend the full scope of her situation. She knew now that I had heard every word. She understood that everything that had happened since the financial cut-off, the tax problems, the social isolation, her job loss had been deliberate, calculated, personal. You destroyed our lives, she said, but there was no anger in it anymore, just defeated recognition.
I still didn't speak.
Sometimes silence carries more weight than any confession.
Ashley's face went white as she stared into my eyes.
You heard us? She whispered again, and I said nothing. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any words. I watched them scramble like insects in a jar, unaware that the lid had been sealed weeks ago. Their first move was predictably desperate, a consultation with a family lawyer about challenging my will. The irony was exquisite. They were plotting to contest a document that no longer existed in the form they imagined. Tuesday morning brought Ashley's first attempt at reconciliation. Her voice on my voicemail carried that fake cheerfulness desperate people use when pretending everything is fine.
Hi, Dad. I was thinking we should talk, clear the air between us. Family is so important, especially after everything we've been through. I didn't return the call.
Wednesday's message escalated slightly. Dad, I know you're angry, but we can work through this. Howard and I have been doing a lot of thinking about our relationship with you. We want to make things right. The transparency was almost insulting.
I understand now that even when I thought I had a safety net, I didn't. You were teaching me to fly without knowing it.
I'm not the same person who laughed about hoping you wouldn't make it to Christmas.
That woman feels like a stranger to me now. I know I can never take back those words or the years of taking your love for granted.
I just wanted you to know that your lesson worked.
I learned.
The letter continued for another page, describing her small apartment, her co-workers, the satisfaction she'd found in simple accomplishments. She didn't ask for contact. She didn't suggest meeting for coffee or rebuilding our relationship. She simply wanted me to know that she'd grown into someone capable of supporting herself. I read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. I felt no urge to respond, no desire to reach out. The lesson had been taught and learned.
That was enough.
That afternoon, I drove to the shelter for my regular volunteer shift. The dogs knew my car by now, and I could hear their excited barking as I pulled into the parking lot. Inside, I went through the familiar routine, checking food bowls, refilling water, spending time with the animals who'd been there longest. A German Shepherd mix named Charlie had been at the shelter for 6 months, too old and scarred to attract adopters. He followed me from kennel to kennel, his greying muzzle nudging my hand whenever I stopped moving. When I sat down to rest, he laid his massive head across my lap with complete trust. "You're a good boy, Charlie," I said, scratching behind his ears. His tail thumped against the concrete floor with pure contentment. This was what love looked like when it wasn't bought or demanded. Charlie didn't care about my bank account or inheritance. He didn't calculate what I could do for him or weigh the benefits of our relationship. He simply appreciated kindness when it was offered. As I prepared to leave that evening, Charlie pressed against the kennel gate, watching me with those intelligent brown eyes. I'd started the paperwork to adopt him the week before. At 63, I was finally ready to share my home with someone who understood loyalty. Walking to my car, I thought about Ashley's letter one more time. She'd learned the value of work, the dignity of independence, the difference between earning and receiving. My methods had been harsh, but the lesson had taken hold. Sometimes people needed to lose everything to discover what they were truly capable of.
I had no regrets about the choices I'd made that Christmas Eve or any day since.
Justice wasn't always gentle, but it was always fair. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.